I just don't think you're right for the leadership track at this time, Melissa, David said, leaning back in his leather chair. The operations director position requires long hours, travel, complete dedication, with your family situation. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I sat across from him, my resume and portfolio spread across his desk, the portfolio showing the project I'd just rescued that saved the company, $2.3 million. My presentation for the operations director role had been perfect. My qualifications were better than anyone else's. I'd worked 80-hour weeks for 3 years. But I had a 4-year-old daughter at home, and apparently that disqualified me. I felt my face burning as I watched him lift his coffee mug with "World's Greatest Dad" printed on it. The same mug he'd bragged about receiving from his teenage son after he'd coached his championship baseball team during work hours. Of course. I understand, I said, though I didn't. I couldn't. Can I ask who you're considering instead? He smiled, relieved I wasn't going to make a scene. Well, Tom's the front runner. He's been with us almost as long as you, and he's really hungry for this. No distractions. Tom, with less experience, lower performance ratings. But Tom was a single guy who could grab beers with clients and hop on a plane anytime. Tom, who'd just borrowed my presentation format for his own review last month. Of course, I nodded, gathering my materials, my fingers numb. Thanks for the consideration. Walking out of that office, I felt something cold crystallize inside me. 3 years of perfect performance reviews. 3 years of coming in early and staying late. 3 years of FaceTime bedtime stories with my daughter. 3 years of being the first to raise my hand for every impossible project. And none of it mattered because I had a child at home. I didn't cry in the bathroom. I didn't call my husband raging. I didn't even slam a door. Instead, I smiled at David's assistant Janice as I passed her desk. "How'd it go?" she whispered, hopeful for me. "About as expected," I said. Only later would I realize how true that was. On some level, I'd always known David would never see me as leadership material. I was a mom first in his eyes, professional second. That night, I kissed my sleeping daughter's forehead. Emma was everything, the reason I worked so hard, the reason I wanted to succeed. Not a distraction. My husband Mike found me staring at her glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. "You didn't get it," he said, not a question. "David said I have family obligations that would interfere." Mike's jaw tightened. "That's discrimination. You should fight it." I smiled, but not from happiness. With what proof? He'll say Tom was more qualified, or had more leadership potential, or some other bullshit. So what now? I closed Emma's door softly. Now I make a plan. 2 weeks later, Janice announced she was leaving for a startup. David was panicking. Janice knew everything about his schedule, his clients, his work habits. She'd been with him 5 years. I knocked on his office door that same afternoon. "David? Got a minute?" He looked up, distracted. "What's up, Melissa? I heard about Janice. That's going to be tough to replace her expertise." He rubbed his temples. "Tell me about it. HR is sending candidates, but the training time alone." I took a breath. "I'd like to apply for the position." He blinked, confused. "My assistant? But you're a senior project manager. That would be a step down." I'd prepared for this. Honestly, after not getting the operations director role, I've been thinking about my career path. I realized I want to better understand the executive perspective. Working directly with you would give me insights I can't get elsewhere. His ego practically purred at this explanation. "Besides," I added, "with Emma starting kindergarten, I'd appreciate the more predictable hours." That last part wasn't even a lie. David's previous assistants always left at 5 p.m. sharp, no matter what. He believed in work-life balance for his support staff, at least. David considered it, clearly flattered. "Your project knowledge would be valuable, but the pay would be less." I smiled. "I understand. I see it as an investment in my future." 2 days later, I had the job. Mike was confused when I told him, "You're taking a demotion? After what he did?" I placed my hands on his shoulders. Trust me, I need to be close to him. I need to understand everything about how he works, who he talks to, what his vulnerabilities are. Vulnerabilities? Melissa, what exactly are you planning? I kissed him. Justice. Working as David's assistant was illuminating. From my first day, I had access to his calendar, emails, files, and most importantly, his habits. David projected an image of perfection. Family man, youth baseball coach, church attendee, devoted husband to Catherine, his college sweetheart, mentor to young professionals, male ones, anyway. He had the corner office, the luxury car, the vacation photos with his perfect family on perfect beaches. But up close, the cracks showed immediately. He took 2-hour lunches 3 times a week but logged them as client meetings. He expense reported everything from his dry cleaning to his children's birthday gifts. He took credit for other people's work, including mining emails to upper management. These were annoying, but hardly the ammunition I needed. So I watched. I waited. I became indispensable. "You're a lifesaver, Melissa," became his daily refrain. I anticipated his needs, prepared his presentations, fixed his mistakes before anyone noticed, managed his image. And I documented everything. 3 months in, I got my first real glimpse behind the curtain. David had been texting throughout our morning meeting. When he left for the bathroom, his phone buzzed on the desk. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. A message preview from someone named J Consulting read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same room as last time? I've been thinking about you all." The rest was cut off, but it was enough to make me curious. That night, I reviewed his calendar. Every Thursday, 1-3 p.m., budget review meeting downtown office. Every single week, same time, same location. We didn't have a downtown office. The next Thursday, I scheduled myself for a doctor's appointment at 1:30 p.m. Instead, I drove to the address I'd found by searching his expense reports, a Marriott hotel downtown. I sat in the lobby with sunglasses and a magazine, feeling ridiculous. But at 2:45, there he was, walking through the lobby with a woman about my age. Her hand briefly touched his lower back as they walked toward the parking garage. She wasn't his wife. I took photos discreetly with my phone. Not enough to prove anything concrete, but enough to confirm my suspicions. Back at work the next day, I dug deeper. The J Consulting charges appeared throughout his expense reports: lunch, drinks, even jewelry one saw categorized as client development. Using the company directory, I eventually identified her, Jennifer Layton, an account executive from one of our vendors. I started a secure document on my personal cloud drive titled Project Justice. But an affair, while damaging, wasn't enough. Marriages survive affairs all the time. I needed more. In my 5th month as his assistant, I found it. David had asked me to prepare materials for the quarterly executive review. This included pulling financial projections and team performance metrics. While compiling these reports, I discovered something odd. Budget allocations that didn't match our team's actual headcount. We had 15 people on our team, but the budget showed salaries for 17. Digging into the payroll system, to which I had access as David's proxy, I found 2 names I didn't recognize receiving director-level salaries: Maxwell Cooper and Alicia Reed. These people didn't exist, at least not in our office. I carefully traced the payment authorizations. Both employees had been added 3 years ago, right around when David received his big promotion. Both had bank accounts at First National Bank. Both had employee files with minimal documentation. And both had home addresses matching properties owned by, according to county records, David's brother-in-law. David was embezzling. Conservative estimate, over $400,000 so far. And he'd used his family connections to do it. His wife's brother was involved. That night, I couldn't sleep. I'd found what I needed, something that would not only destroy David professionally, but would devastate his marriage. His wife, Catherine, had inherited family money. Everyone knew she was the wealthy one in their relationship. Now I understood why she trusted him to manage their finances. The next day, David asked me to book a surprise anniversary trip for him and Catherine. Somewhere tropical, 5-star, money's no object. I smiled and said, "Of course, I'll find something perfect." By month 6, I had everything documented: the affair, the embezzlement scheme, the expense account abuse, the credit-stealing emails, all of it. Organized, dated, with supporting evidence. What I didn't have yet was the perfect moment. That came in month 7, when David announced the new director of special projects, Tom, my former competitor for the operations role. The position hadn't even been posted. The salary was higher than the operations director role I'd been denied. "He deserves it," David told me as I took dictation for the announcement email. "He's got real leadership potential." "Absolutely," I agreed, typing. "He's got no distractions." David laughed. "Exactly. Guy works like a machine." I looked up. "Like I did?" His smile faltered. "Come on, Melissa. You know it's different. You've got Emma to consider. And you've got 3 kids. Somehow that's never been a problem for your career." He sighed, annoyed. "That's not the same thing. Catherine handles all that. You know how it is." I did know. I knew exactly how it was. The next day, I called in sick, my first sick day in 4 years. I drove to the office supply store and bought a plain manila envelope, copy paper, and a new black ink cartridge. At home, I printed the complete dossier on David's activities: the affair documentation, financial records showing the embezzlement scheme, emails proving he stole credit, everything. I added a simple cover note. "Catherine, I'm sorry to be the one to show you this. David is not who he pretends to be. This is all verified information from his work accounts and public records. You deserve to know the truth about the man managing your family money and legacy." I didn't sign it. I addressed the envelope to their home, used a generic return address, and dropped it at a post office across town. Then I went back to work the next day, as if nothing had happened, and waited. 3 days passed, then 4. By the 5th day, I began to worry I'd miscalculated. Maybe Catherine never opened the envelope. Maybe she dismissed it as a prank. Maybe she already knew everything and didn't care. Then David didn't show up to work. No call, no email, nothing. Around 11 I sent him a concerned text. "Everything okay? Several people looking for you this morning." No response for 2 hours. Then, finally, "Family emergency. Cancel all meetings this week." I did as instructed, rescheduling his appointments with practiced efficiency. To everyone who asked, I simply said, "David's dealing with a family matter. I'll make sure he gets your message when he returns." Behind my professional smile, my mind raced. Had it worked? Was Catherine confronting him? Were they fighting? Divorcing? I wanted to know, but I couldn't show any unusual interest. On day 3 of David's absence, Jennifer from J Consulting called the office. "David isn't answering my calls or texts," she said, sounding worried. "Is he okay?" "He's attending to a family emergency," I replied smoothly. "Would you like me to pass along a message?" "Just tell him to call me when he can." Her voice had an edge of panic. "Of course," I said, though I had no intention of doing so. On day 5, our department VP stopped by my desk. "Any word from David?" he asked casually, but his expression was tight. "Family emergency is all I know," I replied. "I've rescheduled everything through next week as a precaution." He nodded slowly. "If he contacts you, tell him I need to speak with him immediately. It's important." Something in his tone made me suspect David's problems had expanded beyond his marriage. That evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Catherine Williams. I need to speak with you. It's about David." My heart hammered in my chest. I kissed Emma goodnight and walked to the kitchen where Mike was washing dishes. "David's wife just texted me," I said, showing him the message. His eyes widened. "What are you going to do?" "Talk to her, I guess." I tried to sound casual, but my hands were shaking. "Melissa," Mike said carefully, "what exactly did you do?" I hadn't told him the specifics of my plan. just that I was gathering information on David. I showed her who her husband really is, I said. That's all. I texted Catherine back. I can meet tomorrow if that works. Her response came quickly. Coffee house on Main, Tenham. The coffee house was half empty when I arrived. Catherine sat in a corner booth, looking nothing like her usual polished self. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair pulled back messily. She wore no makeup. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat across from her. I know this is unorthodox. Of course, I replied. Is everything okay? A stupid question, but I needed to play my part. She let out a humorless laugh. No, nothing is okay. She studied my face. You're his assistant. You know his schedule, his contacts, everything. I nodded cautiously. Did you know, she asked bluntly, about the affair? The money? I hesitated, calculating my response. I suspected some things weren't right, but I only recently put the pieces together. She nodded, satisfied with my answer. I received an envelope last week, documents showing David has been, well, living a double life. I'm so sorry, I said, meaning it. Whatever David had done, Catherine was collateral damage in my revenge. I confronted him, she continued. He denied it at first, then admitted to the affair, but claimed the financial documents were fabricated. Said someone at work was trying to sabotage him. My stomach tightened. But I've been calling the bank, checking records. It's all true. Her voice cracked. 17 years of marriage, and I never really knew him. What will you do? I asked quietly. I've already done it. I've moved out, taken the kids to my parents' house, and filed for divorce. My family's lawyer is looking into the financial fraud. She rubbed her temples. David thinks he can fix this, win me back. He doesn't understand there's nothing left to save. I felt a complicated mix of satisfaction and guilt. The reason I wanted to meet, Catherine continued, is to ask, do you know who sent the documents? David is obsessed with finding out. I kept my expression neutral. I have no idea, but clearly whoever did it had access to his work accounts. She studied me for a moment. Whoever did it, I should probably hate them for blowing up my life. But they did me a favor. Living a lie is worse than facing a painful truth. We talked for another 30 minutes. She asked about David's work habits, his recent behavior. I answered honestly, careful not to reveal too much. As we parted, she squeezed my hand. Thank you for meeting me. I just needed to talk to someone who knows him, who might understand. I nodded. If you need anything else, just ask. Walking back to my car, I felt the first real twinge of doubt. Catherine was a casualty in my war against David. I'd told myself she deserved to know the truth about her husband, but I hadn't considered how devastating that truth would be. David returned to work the following Monday, a ghost of his former self. Unshaven, shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. He barely acknowledged me as he slumped into his office and closed the door. Minutes later, the VP arrived, closing himself in with David. Their voices rose and fell behind the door. 20 minutes passed before the VP emerged, face grim, and walked briskly toward the executive floor. David came out next. Melissa, I need you to pull all the budget reports for the last 3 years. Every document you can find on payroll, team expenses, everything. Right away, I said, already knowing what he was searching for, evidence that someone had accessed those files, clues to who had exposed him. For the next week, David was manic, alternating between desperate energy and listless depression. He had me search through email logs, security badge access records, anything that might reveal who had sent the documents to Catherine. Meanwhile, rumors spread. David's disheveled appearance sparked office gossip. Jennifer from J Consulting stopped calling after David apparently ended things in a heated phone call I pretended not to overhear. The worst blow came when the VP and someone from legal appeared in David's office, closing the door for a 2-hour meeting. When they left, David stared blankly at his computer screen for nearly an hour before calling me in. Melissa, he said, voice hollow, I need you to cancel all my meetings for the next 2 weeks. I'm taking a leave of absence. Is everything okay? I asked, feigning concern. No. He laughed bitterly. Nothing is okay. There's an internal investigation. Something about financial irregularities. Someone's trying to destroy me. I nodded sympathetically. I'm sorry to hear that. Anything I can do to help? He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since returning. You've been a good assistant, Melissa. Better than I deserved, probably. The next day, David was gone again. HR sent an email announcing his temporary leave of absence and naming our VP as interim department head. 2 days later, an internal auditor asked to speak with me. She had questions about David's expenses, the team budget, and the mysterious employees I'd discovered. I answered truthfully, playing the role of the shocked, concerned assistant who only wanted to help. Did you ever notice anything unusual about these budget items? She asked. I only recently gained access to the full budget reports, I explained. When I was preparing for the quarterly review, I noticed some discrepancies, but I assumed there was an explanation. By the 3rd week of David's absence, the office had moved from whispers to open speculation. I heard from accounting that the fraud investigation had expanded. From HR, I learned that David had been placed on administrative leave pending termination. Then came the call from the VP, asking me to come to his office. Melissa, he said when I entered, I want to thank you for maintaining everything during David's absence. Your professionalism has been remarkable. Just doing my job, I replied. Well, I have a proposition for you. With David's situation, we need someone to step in and manage the department temporarily. Someone who knows the projects, the clients, the team dynamics. My heart raced. I'd be happy to help however I can. Good, because frankly, you're the obvious choice. You were a senior project manager before taking the assistant role, which always struck me as an odd career move. I shrugged. I wanted to learn the executive perspective. He smiled. Well, you're about to get a crash course. We'd like to name you interim operations director effective immediately. If things go well, we can discuss making it permanent after a few months. The position I'd been denied. The role David said a mother couldn't handle. I won't let you down, I promised. My first day as interim operations director, I arrived early to move my things from the assistant's desk to David's former office. As I arranged my photos, including one of Emma in her ballet costume, Tom stopped by, his face a mask of poorly concealed resentment. Congratulations on the promotion, he said stiffly. Thank you, Tom. I'm looking forward to working with you. I smiled pleasantly. In fact, I have some ideas about the Peterson account I'd love to discuss later. He nodded and retreated, clearly wondering how I'd leapfrogged from assistant to his new boss in 3 weeks. The team meeting that afternoon was uncomfortable. Everyone had questions about David that I deflected with corporate speak about organizational changes and focusing on moving forward. I outlined my vision for the department, emphasized my open-door policy, and promised no dramatic changes in the first 30 days. Gradually, the team adjusted. My project management experience earned their respect. My knowledge of clients and ongoing work gained during my time as David's assistant proved invaluable. Even Tom eventually came around when I assigned him a high-profile project that showcased his strengths. 6 weeks into my interim role, I received another text from Catherine. Can we meet again? Same place? Tomorrow? We met at the coffee house, where she looked dramatically better than last time, still tired, but more put together, more herself. The divorce is moving forward, she said after we'd gotten our coffees. David's still fighting it, but my lawyer says his position is hopeless, especially with the embezzlement charges pending. I hadn't heard about those. Charges? Like criminal charges? She nodded grimly. The company reported him to the police after their internal investigation. Apparently, he stole over $500,000. My brother is implicated too, which has torn my family apart. Another casualty I hadn't fully considered. I heard you're running the department now, she continued. I nodded. Interim position, but possibly permanent. She smiled sadly. Ironic. The job he refused to give you because you're a mother. I froze. I'd never told her about that. Seeing my expression, she added, David told me everything. About how he denied you the promotion, how you then became his assistant. He's convinced you orchestrated his downfall. My mouth went dry. Does he have any proof of that? She shook her head. Just his paranoia. But it got me thinking about the timing, about your career move that never made sense. She studied me. It was you who sent me those documents, wasn't it? The moment stretched between us. Denying it seemed pointless. You deserve to know the truth, I said finally. She didn't look angry. Instead, she seemed almost relieved. I thought so. For what it's worth, I agree. I did deserve to know. We sat in silence for a moment. Will you tell anyone? I asked eventually. No, she replied. What would be the point? David destroyed himself. You just accelerated the inevitable. She gathered her purse. I should go. But I wanted to see you face to face, to understand. As she stood to leave, she paused. Was it worth it? Your revenge? I considered the question carefully. I didn't do it just for revenge. I did it for justice. For every woman passed over because she has children. For every double standard. For every time someone like David decides our priorities for us. She nodded slowly. I hope you find peace with it. After she left, I sat alone, turning her question over in my mind. Was it worth it? 3 months later, the interim was removed from my title. I was officially operations director, with a team of 17 reporting to me. David had pled guilty to embezzlement charges in exchange for a reduced sentence 18 months in prison, plus restitution. The day my promotion became official, I stayed late at the office, alone with my thoughts. I'd achieved exactly what I'd set out to do. David had lost everything, his job, his marriage, his freedom, his reputation. I had claimed the position that should have been mine all along. Yet victory felt more complicated than I'd imagined. I'd hurt people who weren't David, Catherine, her brother, their children. I'd manipulated systems and people to get what I wanted. I'd become, in some ways, as calculating as David had been. That night, I picked Emma up from my mother's house and took her for ice cream to celebrate my promotion. Does this mean you'll be homeless? She asked, chocolate smeared around her mouth. Actually, no, I told her. It means I can set my own schedule more, make it to more of your school events. That's good, she said simply. I like when you're there. Later, putting her to bed, I realized something important. The revenge hadn't healed me. The promotion hadn't fixed the injustice. What had changed was Mimi's willingness to accept mistreatment, to let others define my worth, to believe I had to choose between motherhood and ambition. The following Monday, I made my first executive decision, implementing flexible work arrangements for parents on the team. My second was promoting Janet, a brilliant project manager who'd been overlooked because she worked part-time after having twins. In my new office, David's old office, I removed his motivational posters and placed a simple frame on my desk. It wasn't a photo of Emma, though I had those too. It was a quote I'd written myself. Justice isn't about destroying others. It's about building something better from the ruins. I didn't regret what I'd done to David. He'd earned every consequence of his actions. But my revenge wasn't the end of the story, it was just the beginning of something new. Something I was building, not just for myself, but for Emma and for every woman who'd ever been told she had to choose. David had denied my promotion because he couldn't imagine a mother as a leader. Now I was leading the team he used to own, creating the workplace I'd always deserved on, where family wasn't seen as a liability but as a strength. That was the real revenge. And it was just getting started.